I'm going to get started. Do feel free to respond via chat if you have any questions or comments, or just like to see yourself in writing. That's fine as well. My name's Adam Stone. I am a consultant, and in fact, I'm responsible for a consulting practice for a Minneapolis-based firm called Secure Digital Solutions. And I have been in the privacy and security business for a great many years, approximately 20, a little over 20. And I've been blessed with opportunities to be part of a number of different business sectors, including, of course, education, but also within financial services and insurance, marketing, software, manufacturing, pharmaceutical, and so on. I'm going to make an attempt at making my presentation work here. This is a little slide about me. We have a very short amount of time, so I'm not going to spend a whole lot of time dealing with the preamble stuff, as it were, related to me or my company. But the bottom line is I come from a small firm. I work for a small firm. We are very entrepreneurial in what we do. And as a result, we understand fully the challenges that you may be going through at this point as entrepreneurs or perhaps entrepreneur aspirants. And so I hope to speak to your needs as entrepreneurs and to your interests as entrepreneurs in this subject of privacy. I'm not an IT guy, and I want to make that very clear. Privacy is not about IT. IT is merely a means to get stuff done. It's a tool, and there are people that tend to see another function, another business function called information security, as being somehow conflated with or part of the data privacy functions within organizations. And really, that isn't exactly true. Though technology certainly has driven our modern concerns relative to data privacy, the fact of the matter is privacy is a very human subject, very context-based subject. And technology has a way of either infringing on our privacy, or in certain cases, you may find opportunities to actually improve trust through the sorts of applications or technologies that you might be thinking of implementing, if that is in fact what your entrepreneurial goals are. So today, I'm going to talk about a few things. I'm going to talk about why I think privacy is critical to entrepreneurs. I'd like to discuss just briefly some of the factors that you should consider, give the briefest overview of the regulatory environment, because we all tend to think of privacy in terms of laws. And I'd like to counter that notion, but the reality is that many of us still see privacy as a matter of the law and is an issue relating to legal rights. And so I'll go with that public perception, though I have some differences of opinion in terms of the breadth and depth of privacy as a subject. We're going to talk a little bit about this notion of privacy by design and what it means to you, and then we'll talk about next steps. Again, if you have any questions, comments, concerns, feel free to speak up in the chat. And if it makes sense, I will try to address them during our presentation. If not, my contact information is in this presentation, as well as, I think, in my bio, and you're welcome to reach out to me after this session. We are today only a half hour, so I got 20 minutes to get my point across. I'm going to try to do it as efficiently as possible. So, as entrepreneurs, I'm going to assume that you're here because you are either actively in the process of building or perhaps expanding an entrepreneurial enterprise, or you're thinking about whether it makes sense for you. You're trying to understand some of the barriers to entry, some of the things that you got to worry about as an emerging entrepreneur. And that's really the sort of focus or sort of background context for which I'm going to give you my messages. So, as an entrepreneur, why do I believe privacy is critical? Well, the fact of the matter is, if you are releasing a product to the public, to the marketplace, whether that is to consumers, whether that's to businesses, or whether it's to a mix, the fact of the matter is your business hinges on whether or not the people who are buying stuff from you or who are thinking about buying stuff from you trust you and have, in fact, confidence in what you're doing and how you're doing it. Now, that trust and confidence comes in all sorts of forms, we know. Obviously, if you are building a quality product, you may want to hang your hat on that quality proposition as your trust proposition. So in other words, trust me because I make the best darn product out there. And that's one way to think about it. For many people, especially folks in these sessions, I'm finding that you're oftentimes building a piece of software or perhaps some sort of online service. And I can tell you that from that perspective, trust and confidence is really pivotal to your near-term and long-term success as an emerging entrepreneur. We can think of circumstances where trust has been eroded. Without naming names, I'll name Facebook. I'll name Google. I'll name other social media providers. Facebook in particular, that makes a good example. I don't think I'm speaking out of turn by saying that Facebook has not done a particularly good job in winning the trust and confidence of people who care about privacy. We know that Facebook's business model really doesn't concern itself too much about privacy. In fact, it's the antithesis of privacy. I'll tell you, more power to them. That's how they make their money. However, if you're in a line of business where you need your clients or customers to trust that you are going to treat them fairly, you're going to act ethically and lawfully, privacy is a key part of that equation. I would also argue that privacy can provide you a competitive advantage. What do I mean by this? Let's say that you are entering the market where you're developing a piece of software that sets up calendar or appointments for people, and we know that sort of offering, lots of people provide that sort of offering, but you think you have some sort of secret sauce that will disrupt the market in calendaring services. And so you want to try to break out from the pack and show everybody how great you are. Well, I'll tell you something. If you come right out of the gate and as part of your value proposition say, you know what, we recognize that when you're making appointments, the stuff that you might be talking about in those appointments could be sensitive, could be confidential. I, as a new business owner and as a provider of this service, am going to do what it takes to ensure that your communications stay private to the best of my ability. That is a value proposition that can really translate into a competitive advantage, especially if your competitors don't seem to give much of a hoot about privacy or perhaps talk privacy, but really in reality that's not what their practices seem to demonstrate. Also, privacy enables us to really think outside of the box in terms of innovation, speed to market. What do I mean by that? Well, privacy innovations could mean that, for instance, let's say that you offer a product where your competitors do not normally encrypt the communications between a customer and the computer servers in the back end. But you, recognizing that weakness in your competitors, have now decided, oh, wow, I'm going to make encryption part of my thing so that I can keep my communications private and win the hearts and minds of my potential consumers or clients. That's one way to innovate beyond what your competitors might be offering. Speed to market means that if you are building a piece of software and you haven't thought about privacy and security at the beginning of the process, well, guess what? At the end of the process, you're going to find out that there are some issues, whether they become information security issues, like, for instance, you haven't encrypted communications, and oops, I forgot to add that as part of my offering. Well, now you have to go and rework, and that costs money, it costs time, and ultimately it makes it difficult to enter the marketplace with the sort of speed that you're looking for. So by thinking of privacy and its enabling function, information security, at the beginning of your process, you will reduce rework at the end and therefore improve your speed to market. And that really also speaks to the operational efficiencies as well. Oops, went over here. So as an entrepreneur, thinking about privacy, I would like you to consider some important factors as a business owner. One of the first things I'd like you to think about is what you're really selling. Now, if I asked you, Megan, what are you selling? And Megan might say, I'm picking on Megan because I see her name. Megan says, yeah, I'm selling a service that does blah, blah, blah. And I'm like, oh, great. Megan, what are you really selling? Megan stops to think for a second. She says, I'm really trying to sell good feelings. I'm trying to sell confidence with my clients because they need to feel this sort of confidence in the services that I provide because of X. And so when you think about what you're selling, I want you to think a little deeper. The answers that you find will help you address the question of whether or not privacy is an important, in fact, a critical feature of the products and services that you are offering or plan to offer. You also want to think about how you're selling your product or service. Are you doing it online? Are you going door to door? Something in between. Whichever methods you use to sell your products, you got to think about how you're going to find leads, how you're going to approach these leads, whether or not you're going to creep out these people if you approach them. And I'll tell you, if you creep them out, guess what? You've infringed on their privacy in some way. They may not say it in that way, but that's really what's happening. And they get creeped out by it. As a result, they might not buy anything from you. So it is important to think about both the channels for which you're selling, or through which you're selling, and the ways for which you're selling your products and services. You also want to think about who's going to buy your products and services. Is it consumers? If so, which slice of the consumer market are you trying to capture? Are you trying to capture kids? Well, there's definitely some privacy considerations there. Are you trying to capture older adults? Okay, well, they didn't grow up. Yeah, I didn't grow up with technology. So there might be some things to think about there. If you're trying to capture the millennial market, okay, that's yet another area to consider in terms of what the millennial or Gen X, or excuse me, Gen Y populations, are concerned about with respect to their privacy and with respect to the ways that you treat them in terms of are you providing an authentic offering? Are you being authentic? Are you being transparent? Do you want your clients or customers to have confidence in you? Well, if so, privacy is a key component of that. Last thing, of course, is to think about who you're competing against. And I would recommend very strongly that you look at your potential competitors and you ask yourself, okay, how in fact are they selling their stuff? To whom? And through what channels? And think about whether there are opportunities for you to do it different, to do it better, to do it in a way that reflects, that signals to the people that you're trying to communicate to that you respect them and you respect their privacy as a result. As a business owner, it is really important when you think about privacy and its importance to your business, you want to think about what your own ethical foundations are. If you're in business to make money and make profit and damn the torpedoes, that's all you want, well, privacy probably isn't as important to you unless it is critical to your bottom line. Now, if you're a person who really cares about social causes, who wants to act in the betterment of the public good, or who just frankly doesn't want to creep people out, well, that's great. Either way, you have to determine what your ethical foundation is, because ultimately that's going to lead to the sort of culture that you generate once you start hiring people, once you start bringing in partners or investors or anything of that nature. Your ethical foundation forms the basis of whatever corporate culture you are building at this moment, or that you'd like to build. You want to also make sure that you're balancing your business interests with those who are either both buying your stuff as well as those who are supporting you in your business endeavors. And what I mean by that are your service providers, your partners, the entire supply chain necessary to get your products from point A to point B, whether that's electronic or digital products or whether that's actual products. Frankly, it doesn't matter. The idea is that when you think about privacy, it's important to strike a balance between the interests of the people who you're doing business with and your own business interests. And again, ultimately, as I want to emphasize that your own ethical frame, your own ethical foundation will set the tone for the organization writ large. And so it's important for you to think about that up front as you are thinking about the importance of privacy to your business model. So moving on to the regulatory environment, there's lots and lots of laws that you have to think about. And one of the reasons why people like me exist is because I help people like you navigate this incredibly complex patchwork of laws at the international, at the national level, and at the state level. Now, I'm here focusing only on data privacy laws. There are a number of laws that are focused on information security, which, as I said before, is a supporting function to privacy. But these are the predominant privacy laws that you have to consider depending on what you're selling, how you're selling it, and to whom. International laws, you may have heard of the General Data Protection Regulation, or GDPR. That's going to be really important for you to think about if you plan on doing business in the EU and or UK market. National laws. This particular track is the education track. And so you might be considering the impact of FERPA on your business model. That's the law, the national law, relating to the privacy of student records. But there might also be other laws that you need to concern yourself with. For instance, HIPAA, or the Health Insurance Portability and Accountability Act, is focused on folks that operate within the health care business and at all stages in that supply chain. Gramm-Leach-Bliley Act is a law aimed at financial services companies and their service providers. COPPA, which is the law aimed at protecting children's privacy, primarily on via online sorts of offerings. And then there's some other laws that you, at the national level, that you have to concern yourself with. What I will say is that regardless of the laws that you see here and your analysis of which laws might apply to you, which laws might not, at the end of the day, your business practices will likely be under the default jurisdiction of the Federal Trade Commission, the FTC. And any sort of representations that you make to the public, for instance, if you are working on a privacy policy or privacy notice, something that will be published and publicly available, you better darn well be doing what that notice says. You do not want to get into a situation where you simply copy somebody else's privacy notice and wipe your hands clean and say, good, I'm good to go. Because the fact of the matter is, if the things that you say in that notice are not reflecting the actual the reality within your business operations, and the FTC finds out about it, you're going to get a smackdown of epic proportions. So be aware of that. Last but not least are the state laws. And the law that's probably the most visible at this moment is the Golden State and the California Consumer Privacy Act of 2018. This law has been, the media has hyped this law, overhyped this law, according to me, by saying that it's basically the American version of GDPR. And the fact is, it sounds and feels a little bit like GDPR, but it's very, very different. And it may, in fact, apply to your business model if, in fact, you plan to sell your stuff to folks that live in California. There are other state laws as well, depending on what you're selling and to whom you're selling it. So, as a emerging entrepreneur, or as an entrepreneur who is expanding your business, I'd like you to think about bringing privacy into the picture early in the process, perhaps at the ideation phase. There's a set of principles out there that was created in 2009, several years ago. But frankly, these principles are absolutely brilliant. We'll talk about them in a moment. They're called privacy by design. But as an entrepreneur, the messages I'd like you to take away from this conversation today is that you have the power to change the paradigm regarding how organizations collect data, use data, and share data about folks that you're selling to, your partners, and so on. You have the ability in these early phases to decide, how much do I want to share data? Perhaps you don't want to share at all. Great, you'll make some friends. But perhaps if you need to share in order to make some revenue streams, that's fine. It's important that when you do so, you try to limit it and you are transparent about it. Facebook makes an attempt to be transparent about their sharing practices. But the fact of the matter is, we've learned through myriad news articles that Facebook is not at all transparent about the way it shares data with folks. That makes a difference for folks who care about privacy. I'd also like you to think about the user first. If you are building an online tool, for instance, I'd like you to really think about the user and think about user-centered design. Privacy is a key component within user-centered design. Last but not least, I'd like you to think about the impact and the value of authenticity for the millennial population. I have heard countless of stories from my kids, from their friends, and from my students. I teach at the University of Minnesota, who all seem to talk about this need for authenticity. And I urge you to think about how privacy factors into an authentic message about your products and services. So how can you get that done? Well, I would recommend that you consider this idea called privacy by design. Consider it early in the process as you are developing your products and services. It's a set of 7 principles, and I don't have time to go into these principles, and I believe in my presentation I provide a pointer to where you can get some information or the details behind these principles. But the message I want to leave with you is to go and take a look at these principles and see how they might apply to the emerging products and services that you have started getting out to the market or that you plan to get out to the market. And think about how these principles can help enable your business to be more nimble, to innovate, to stand out above your competition, to improve operational efficiencies, and to best yet signal an authentic message such that your buyers and potential buyers have trust and confidence in you, your business, and the stuff that you sell. So the next steps, just to emphasize my point. First off, set your compass. Understand your ethical frame, because that will determine the culture within your growing organization. Understand the value of business data to you. Also understand the value of that business data to the people who actually own it. Personal data. The value that you place in a record about an individual might be different than the value that that individual places on that record. I urge you to think about that and think about the implications. Think about privacy early. I've said that many times. Understand who your customer is, and better yet, understand how you sell to that customer in the first place. And last but not least, a shameless plug for me, use people like me to help you grow early in the process. I've helped a number of entrepreneurs get themselves off the ground by thinking they're going to get themselves off the ground regardless if I'm there. But by virtue of somebody like me helping, their message about authenticity, about trust and confidence is going to be that much more salient, that much more clear to the people who you wish to do business with. That's the end of my conversation today. I thank you for participating. And if you folks want to talk with me, you got my information here. I believe that you can either send a direct message to me if you'd like a copy of this presentation, or I believe the TCSW folks have it in the speaker resources. That's all I got. I thank you all for participating.